My parents took Grandpa's $2 million, promised to care for him, then left him alone in a storm with wet pills and nowhere to go. I brought him home while they called me greedy in front of everyone. But Grandpa had written down every cruel thing they did, and when the trust was read, their perfect lie finally broke. Sighed Maria Siri. I was 34 the night my parents turned my grandfather into luggage. That is the only way I know how to say it without making it softer than it was. The ferries had already stopped running in Bellwether Cove. The rain was coming sideways off the Oregon coast, cold and hard, the kind that did not fall from the sky so much as attack from every direction. I was 5 hours into a night shift at County Dispatch when my personal phone buzzed under the desk. I should not have looked. We were busy with flooded roads, fallen cedar limbs, and one overturned boat trailer blocking Harbor Road, but something in my chest tightened before I even saw the name. Noreen Wexler, a retired ferry clerk, a woman who knew my family only well enough to know something was wrong. Her message was short. Maren, your grandpa is outside the terminal in this weather. Walker, duffel bag, medical papers. Nobody is with him. 8 months earlier, my parents had taken $2 million from him and promised to care for him for the rest of his life. That night, they left him on a metal bench outside a closed ferry office with the tide rising, the streetlights shaking, and a paper grocery bag full of pills going soft in the rain. What the trust revealed after he died is the part my mother never prepared for, because she thought $2 million had bought his silence. She did not know my grandfather had spent his whole life writing things down. My grandfather's name was Benton Rook, and if you ever bought a sump pump, storm latch, boat hook, or roll of marine rope in Bellwether Cove, there was a fair chance he had sold it to you. He owned Rook's Harbor Hardware for almost 50 years, a narrow gray building 2 blocks from the ferry dock with a bell over the door and windows that fogged in winter. He was not the soft kind of old man people put in greeting cards. He was lean, stubborn, sharp-eyed, and suspicious of anything that came with a monthly subscription. He wore the same brown work coat until the elbows shined. He saved screws in baby food jars. He kept a black waterproof logbook in his coat pocket and wrote in it every day: weather, tide, repairs, deliveries, broken windows, paid invoices, unpaid promises. People thought it was a habit. I thought it was another old man thing, like carrying peppermints and refusing to replace a chair until the chair lost the will to exist. I did not understand then that his logbook was not a habit. It was a second memory, and he trusted paper more than blood. 8 months before the storm, he sold the hardware store and the small apartment above it for $2 million even. The buyer was a coastal safety company from Seattle that wanted the location and the old customer accounts. Grandpa was 82 by then. His hands shook when he buttoned his cuffs, and his knees had started giving him warnings he pretended not to hear. My father, Garrick Rook, said it was time. My mother, Lenora, said it was practical. My brother, Tobin, said Grandpa deserved to rest, which was Tobin's way of sounding kind, while measuring the size of the box. I was there the afternoon the money moved. We sat around my parents' dining room table under a chandelier my mother called antique, even though she bought it online. Grandpa had a paper cup of coffee he did not drink. My father kept rubbing his thumb against the side of his phone. My mother had a yellow legal pad and a smile too polished to be comfort. Grandpa signed the transfer papers and looked at my father. He said, "Use it to keep me home." That was the condition. Not a speech, not a lecture. 6 words. My father nodded too fast. My mother reached across the table and touched Grandpa's wrist like she was in a church photo. "Of course, Benton," she said. "Family takes care of family." I remember the room after she said that. It went warm and wrong, like milk left too long on the counter. My parents had already talked about converting the downstairs guest room into a care room, a safer bed, a real bathroom rail, a medication cabinet, a ramp from the driveway, a chair by the window facing the hydrangeas. My mother had shown me pictures on her phone, all soft lighting and expensive blankets. My father said he would handle the doctor visits. Tobin offered to help with the paperwork, which made Grandpa look up from his coffee for half a second. Nobody asked Grandpa which chair he liked. Nobody asked what time he took his pills. Nobody asked who his cardiologist was, or whether he wanted the room painted, or whether he was scared to leave the building where he had lived above his own shop for 48 years. They talked around him like he was a project already approved by committee. Grandpa listened, then he opened his black logbook and wrote one line. I could not see what it said. When I asked him later why he looked so calm, he said, "A storm tells the truth faster than people do." I laughed because I thought he was talking about weather. I was always late understanding him. The first month looked fine from the outside. My parents moved him into the downstairs room, though it was still full of boxes and a broken treadmill. My mother posted a picture on Facebook of Grandpa sitting at their kitchen table with soup in front of him and wrote, "Blessed to care for our family patriarch." People commented with hearts. Churchwomen brought casseroles. My father drove Grandpa to one appointment and mentioned it 4 times. Tobin came by with a gas station muffin and asked if Grandpa had updated everything, as if estate planning were a normal topic to bring up with a man trying to swallow oatmeal. I was working nights at County Dispatch then, sleeping in pieces during the day in my apartment above a closed bakery. I answered emergencies for a living. Heart attacks, domestic fights, drunk drivers, missing kids, house fires, men who said they were fine while bleeding into towels. I was trained to keep my voice steady no matter what broke on the other end of the line. That training followed me into my family. When my mother called and said Grandpa was getting difficult, I asked for details. She said he kept asking for his logbook when she moved it. She said he wanted his old coffee mug instead of the new set she bought. She said he corrected her when she told people he was confused. "It's embarrassing," she said. "He makes us look like we don't know what we're doing." I should have heard the danger in that. I heard irritation and called it stress. By the 3rd month, the downstairs care room was still not finished. The ramp had not been built. The medication cabinet was a decorative basket on the counter. My mother's kitchen, however, had new quartz counters and brass handles. The sunroom had heated floors. My father had paid off a business line of credit he had complained about for years. Tobin's failed seafood trailer suddenly had new tires, a new wrap, and another chance to fail in a brighter color. When I asked my mother whether Grandpa's money was being used for his care, she looked at me like I had spit on her table. "Do not audit me in my own home, Maren," she said. "You have no idea what sacrifice looks like." I had come straight from a 12-hour shift and still had dispatch headset marks pressed into my hair. I looked at the new faucet behind her, black and gold, and probably worth a week of my rent, and I did not answer. Grandpa sat in the next room by the window, his black logbook open on his knee. I saw his pen move once, just once. The night they dumped him, my shift supervisor let me leave because she saw my face change when I read Noreen's text. I drove through water deep enough to slap the bottom of my car. The whole town looked half erased by rain. Storefronts were dark. The ferry parking lot was empty except for one security light swinging in the wind. I found him on the metal bench under the terminal overhang, but the overhang was useless in that storm. Rain blew right through it. His walker was folded beside him. His duffel bag sat at his feet, soaked. The grocery bag of medication had split open, and orange pill bottles rolled against the bench legs. He was wearing a thin coat I had never seen before, not his brown work coat, and his hair was plastered to his forehead. He had both hands wrapped around his black logbook, holding it against his chest under the coat, like it was the only dry part of him. Noreen stood 10 feet away with an umbrella turned inside out, furious in the way small, older women can be when they have decided politeness is no longer useful. "I called your mother first," she said. "She told me transport was coming. There is no transport. Terminal's been closed since 7. I crouched in front of Grandpa and put my hands over his. His fingers were ice. "Grandpa," I said, trying to keep my dispatch voice and losing it anyway. "Who left you here?" He looked past me toward the dark ferry slip, where the water was black and white in the wind. For a second, I thought he might protect them. That was how our family worked. Bad things were folded away to keep the table looking nice. But then he turned his eyes to me, clear as glass. "Your father drove," he said. "Your mother packed." My throat closed. Why? He gave a small breath that was not a laugh. They said the respite place would take me tonight, said I had become unsafe in the house, said I needed professional care. He tapped the logbook with one finger. I asked for the name of the place. Nobody answered. I gathered the pill bottles with shaking hands. One had water under the cap. "I'm taking you home," I said. He looked at me then, and the sharpness in his face softened just enough to hurt. "Not theirs," he said. "Don't take me back to people who need money to remember I'm human." My apartment above the old bakery was not made for an 82-year-old man with weak knees. The stairs were narrow, the bathroom door stuck. The heat complained all night. I gave him my bedroom because it was closest to the bathroom, and took the couch under the front window where the neon bakery sign still glowed red even though the bakery had been closed for 2 years. That first night, I peeled wet socks off his feet, wrapped him in every towel I owned, and lined his pill bottles on my kitchen counter like evidence. He apologized 3 times for dripping on the floor. Finally, I said, "You don't apologize for needing a chair in a storm." He stopped then. His face changed. Not much, but enough. The next morning, I called his doctor, the pharmacy, my landlord, and a handyman I could not afford. I bought a shower chair with a credit card that was already tired. I taped medication times to the fridge. I moved my sleep into 2 broken pieces, one before my shift and one after breakfast. Grandpa watched me do all this from the kitchen table wrapped in a blanket, his logbook beside his coffee. "You answer emergencies all night, kid," he said. "Doesn't mean you have to become one." I told him I was fine. He looked at my hands, which were trembling from no sleep and too much coffee. "That word gets people killed," he said. "Fine." My parents did not call that morning. Tobin texted around noon. "Don't turn this into a performance. Mom and Dad already paid their part." I read it 3 times because my brain refused to accept the shape of it. Already paid their part. As if Grandpa were a bill closed at the end of the month. I did not reply. At 5, my mother called. Her voice had that calm, wounded edge she used when she was already telling the story to an invisible audience. "Maren, you embarrassed us last night," she said. I looked at Grandpa's coat hanging over my shower rod, still dripping into the tub. "You left him outside a closed terminal in a storm." She sighed like I was exhausting. "We arranged care. He refused to cooperate. He always was stubborn. Your father and I are not trained for this level of need." "You had $2 million to get trained," I said. Silence. Then her voice dropped. "Be careful. You have no idea what he's been saying. He is confused and you are emotional. That is a dangerous combination." I knew then what she was building, not a defense, a reputation. Mine. Within a week, Bellwether Cove knew my mother's version. She told church people that I had taken Grandpa in the middle of a medical transition. She told my aunts he was showing signs of dementia. She told neighbors I was unstable from night shift work and loneliness. That last part spread fast because people enjoy a sad woman more when they can blame her sadness on poor choices. My father said almost nothing, which helped her more than any lie. Tobin told cousins I was trying to get control of Grandpa's assets, though as far as I knew, the assets were gone, spent into counters, floors, debts, and seafood trailer tires. People who had never visited Grandpa at my parents' house sent me messages about family unity. One cousin wrote, "You only get one mother." I almost wrote back, "Grandpa only got one son." Instead, I deleted the message and went to work. At dispatch, a woman called because her husband had fallen in the bathroom and she could not lift him. I talked her through keeping him warm until medics arrived. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the screen and thought about how strangers asked for help more honestly than my own family ever had. Grandpa settled into my apartment with the quiet discipline of a man determined not to take up space. He folded his blanket every morning, he rinsed his cup, he wrote in the logbook after breakfast and again before bed. At first, I thought he was recording weather like always. Then, one afternoon, after my mother called and said she wanted to discuss his future, I watched him open the book and write the exact phrase down. discuss his future. March 29th. Lenora, tone sweet, asked if Maren had touched bank papers. I stood behind him long enough to read it before I looked away. "Grandpa," I said, "why are you writing all that?" He capped his pen slowly. "People forget what they said when it costs them money." "Are you planning something?" He smiled a little. "I'm remembering." That was all he gave me. Benton Rook could hide a whole thunderstorm behind one word. Money became the second weather system in my apartment. It moved under everything. His new medication was $286 after insurance. The walker Noreen helped me find was used but still not free. The handyman charged half price to install a railing on the stairs because he had loved Grandpa's hardware store, and I cried in the bathroom after he left because even kindness felt expensive. I called my father once. Not my mother, my father. I caught him at his office and said, "Dad, he needs help with medication costs this month. I'm not asking you for me, I'm asking for him." My father breathed into the phone for a long time. In the background, I heard my mother say, "Who is it?" He said, "Your mother handled the funds, Maren." "Then unhandle them," I said. He lowered his voice. "It's complicated." I looked at Grandpa through the kitchen doorway. He was trying to pull a blanket over his knees without asking. "No," I said. "It is not complicated. You took his money to care for him. He needs care." My mother came on the line without greeting me. "We already gave him a life," she said. "Don't ask us to fund your little rescue act." Something inside me went still. I wrote the sentence on the back of an envelope before I realized I was doing what Grandpa did. The first time Grandpa asked about my old paramedic training, I almost changed the subject. He had seen the certification books in a box under my desk. I told him the short version, which is what people tell when the long version still has teeth. I had trained for it. I had been good. Then one call during a ride-along broke something in me. A child, a swimming pool, too many minutes without air. I did everything they told me to do, and it was still not enough. After that, I moved sideways into dispatch because I could help from a room with screens and rules. Grandpa listened without interrupting. Then he said, "Quitting one road doesn't mean you were never brave. It means you lived long enough to choose another." I wanted to tell him that sounded like something stitched on a pillow. Instead, I cried, which annoyed me. He pretended not to notice, which was his way of being gentle. From that night on, he would sit at the kitchen table during my early dinner and ask about one call from my shift. Not the worst one. Just one. He said emergencies had to be set down somewhere, or they followed you home and slept in your chair. In the second month, he asked me to drive him to Rosalind Gable's office. I knew the name. Everyone in town knew it. She handled estates, trusts, and the kind of disputes polite families created when money made them honest by accident. Grandpa came out of the bedroom wearing his pressed gray shirt and his old shop apron folded over one arm. The black logbook was tucked under it. "Do you want me to come in?" I asked. "No," he said. "I want you to wait." Then, after a pause, "And not wonder too loudly." That was as close as he came to making a joke. Rosalind's office was above the credit union, with windows facing the harbor and a waiting room full of quiet furniture. I sat there for more than an hour while rain scratched the glass. When the door opened, Grandpa came out tired but lighter, like some invisible weight had moved from his back into Rosalind's file cabinet. Rosalind walked him to the door herself. She had silver-brown hair cut to her chin, a voice like smooth stone, and eyes that missed nothing. She looked at me and said, "Ms. Rook." Not Maren, is Rook. Like the title already mattered. Grandpa said nothing on the drive home. He held the logbook in both hands. Finally, near the marina, he said, "A trust is only paper until somebody proves they deserve it." I asked what that meant. He looked out at the water. "It means paper has patience." Tobin came 3 days later with a mobile notary and a box of donuts. That was Tobin exactly. Sugar on top of a trap. He arrived while I was sleeping before my shift, and Grandpa let him in because Grandpa had never been afraid of men who thought they were clever. I came out of the bedroom to find Tobin at my kitchen table, smiling too wide, papers spread in front of him. The notary, a nervous young man in a blue jacket, looked like he wanted to disappear into my wall. "This is just to make things easier," Tobin said. "Medical decisions, bills, access. Grandpa needs a family point person." "He has one," I said. Tobin's eyes hardened, then softened when he remembered the role he was playing. "Maren, you work nights. You're exhausted. Nobody is attacking you." Grandpa picked up the top page and read for maybe 10 seconds. "Durable power of attorney," he said. Tobin leaned forward. "For protection." Grandpa placed the paper back on the table. "A signature is not a blanket," he said. "You don't throw it over a theft and call it care." The notary coughed. Tobin's smile died. "You're making a mistake, he said. Grandpa opened his logbook and wrote in front of him. April 18th. Tobin brought POA with notary. Called theft protection. Tobin left without the donuts. Grandpa ate one after dinner and said it tasted like bad intentions. The hospital scare came in late April. Grandpa stood up too fast and went down hard near the kitchen sink. I heard the fall from the bathroom and came running with shampoo still in my hair. At the ER, Dr. Alaric Stone reviewed his records and asked who had been managing his prescriptions before me. I said my parents had. He frowned at the screen. "There are refill gaps here," he said. "More than one." My face got hot. "How long?" He turned the monitor slightly, not enough for me to read private details, but enough to show me the pattern. Weeks in some cases. That may have contributed to the dizziness. Grandpa, lying in the bed with a blanket over his chest, said, "Write that down, doctor." Dr. Stone looked at him. Grandpa looked back. Something passed between them. The doctor nodded. "I will." Later, while Grandpa slept, Rosalind Gable appeared in the hallway like the legal system had grown legs. She spoke quietly with Dr. Stone, then with Grandpa when he woke. I waited near the vending machines and understood very little except that people who kept things in writing were starting to find each other. My mother chose the summer fundraiser to humiliate me. Bellwether Cove held it every year for storm relief, though half the donors were people who built expensive houses too close to the water and then wanted applause for supporting sandbags. I went because Grandpa wanted to donate old inventory from the shop that the buyer had returned to him. Flashlights, hand-crank chargers, emergency blankets. He was too tired to attend, so I brought the boxes. My mother was there in a cream coat, accepting compliments for the sunroom renovation she called our healing space. I should have dropped the boxes and left. Instead, I got trapped near the coffee urn with 3 women from church and my Aunt Perry, who smelled trouble like perfume. My mother came over and put one hand on my shoulder. "Maren has been so intense lately," she said, smiling at them. "She means well, but she is using Benton to fill something empty in herself. We're trying to be patient." The women froze in the polite way people freeze when cruelty arrives dressed as concern. I looked at my mother's hand until she removed it. Every part of me wanted to say ferry terminal, rain, medication gaps, $2 million. But Grandpa had told me once, never spill truth in a room built for gossip. It just becomes more gossip. So I picked up the donation receipt, said, "Enjoy the fundraiser," and left. That night, when I told Grandpa, he opened the logbook. "Exact words," he said. I gave them to him. He wrote slowly. His hand shook, but the letters were clear. The last good night came without warning. They always do. You think you were in the middle of something, and later you learn you were at the edge. Grandpa had a good appetite that evening. I made tomato soup and grilled cheese because it was cheap and soft enough for him. Rain tapped the windows, not a storm, just regular coast rain, the kind people in Bellwether Cove stopped noticing. He sat at the kitchen table with the black logbook closed beside him. That was unusual. He watched me pay bills on my laptop until I snapped it shut, because shame feels louder when someone kind is near it. "I did not take you in for money," I said, though he had not accused me. "I know," he said. I didn't take you in because I'm noble either. I was angry. I still am. Good, he said. Anger is a smoke alarm. Just don't move into the fire. I laughed a little. He reached across the table and tapped the logbook. You never asked what I was worth. I knew what you were worth, I said. You were worth getting out of the rain. His face changed then. It was not sadness exactly. It was decision. That's why I finally know where it belongs, he said. I asked where what belonged. He shook his head. Some answers are not late. They're scheduled. He died 9 days later in the blue hour before morning. I had come home from shift at 6:18, carrying eggs and a newspaper, because he liked pretending newspapers still mattered. The apartment was too quiet, not silent, exactly. Quiet in the wrong shape. I found him in my bed, one hand resting on top of the black logbook. His glasses were folded on the nightstand. His old shop apron hung over the chair. On the table beside the bed was a note in his blocky handwriting. Take this where the papers are read. For a moment, I did not cry. I counted breaths that were not there. That is what dispatch training does to you. It makes you look for information before grief is allowed to enter. Then I sat on the floor beside the bed and held his hand until it was not his hand anymore, just the place his hand had been. I called Dr. Stone. I called the funeral home, then I called my father, because decency is sometimes a duty you perform for yourself, not for the person receiving it. He answered on the second ring. Dad? I said. Grandpa passed this morning. He made a sound, small and startled. Then my mother's voice came through, sharp in the background. Ask her about the documents. My father whispered, Lenora. But he did not hang up. He did not defend the dead. He just breathed. I said, the funeral home will call you, and ended it. The funeral was my mother's finest piece of theater. She wore navy instead of black because, she told everyone, Benton loved the sea. Grandpa had hated the sea except as a weather problem. She stood near the casket with tissues folded in her palm and said, again and again, we tried so hard to keep him comfortable. My father stood beside her, pale and quiet. Tobin gave a speech about legacy that included the phrase, family stewardship, which made Rosalind Gable, seated in the back row, look down at her program for one long second. I stood near the side aisle in a dress I had worn to a county safety banquet and listened to people comfort my mother for abandoning a man they believed she had nursed. Noreen Wexler came, though she barely knew us. She squeezed my hand and said, I saw what I saw. That was the first kind sentence anyone in town gave me without asking for both sides. After the service, Rosalind approached me with a cream envelope. Your grandfather requested a trust conference in 10 days, she said. He wanted your parents, your brother, you, Dr. Stone, and 2 witnesses present. Witnesses? I asked. Her eyes moved across the room to my mother, who was crying into Aunt Perry's shoulder without smearing her mascara. Yes, Rosalind said. He was specific. 10 days is a long time when lies are sprinting. My mother told people I had hidden Grandpa's papers. Tobin told cousins I had blocked the family from seeing him, though he had been free to climb my stairs any day, and chose not to, unless he brought a notary. My father came by once and left Grandpa's old brown work coat folded in a bag outside the bakery door. No note. I stood in the hallway holding that coat, breathing in dust, cedar, and metal, and hated him more for the almost apology than I would have hated him for nothing. Almost is where cowards go to rest. I kept working. I kept sleeping badly. I kept the logbook on my kitchen table but did not open the final pages. That felt like a door Grandpa had not invited me through yet. The night before the trust conference, I finally touched the cover and said out loud, I don't know what you did. The apartment gave no answer. Rain tapped the window. Somewhere down on Harbor Road, a truck backed up with 3 soft beeps. I put the logbook in my bag and slept for 90 minutes. The morning the trust was read, a coastal storm rolled in from the west. Not as violent as the ferry terminal night, but heavy enough to turn the harbor silver and make gulls vanish from the pilings. Rosalind's office smelled like paper, coffee, and wet wool. My parents were already there when I arrived. My mother sat straight-backed in a charcoal coat, her lips pressed into a line of injured dignity. My father looked smaller than I remembered. Tobin wore a blazer, which meant he expected money. Aunt Perry and Noreen Wexler sat near the wall as witnesses. Dr. Stone stood by the window with a folder under one arm. Rosalind entered without drama, carrying a thick binder and a slim metal case. She placed both on the conference table. "Before we begin," she said, "Mr. Benton Rook asks that I identify the document in Ms. Maren Rook's possession." I took the black logbook from my bag. My mother made a soft, scoffing sound. "His little weather diary?" Rosalind looked at her over her glasses. "Among other things." My mother tried to start before the reading did. "Rosalind, I want it on record that Benton was not himself at the end. My daughter isolated him." Rosalind folded her hands. "It is on record that Mr. Rook completed 2 capacity evaluations, one with Dr. Stone and one with an independent geriatric psychiatrist. Both found him competent to amend and restate his trust." My mother's face tightened. Tobin leaned back. My father closed his eyes. Rosalind continued. "It is also on record that Mr. Rook requested this meeting be conducted with witnesses because he expected certain claims." That sentence cooled the room. Rosalind opened the binder. "Mr. Rook's trust was originally created 16 years ago and amended several times. The final restatement was executed after he moved into Ms. Rook's residence." My mother whispered, "Of course it was." Rosalind turned a page. "Mrs. Rook, I will ask you once to let the document speak before you answer it." Noreen made a sound that might have been a cough. It was not. The first reveal was the $2 million. Rosalind read in a voice so calm it made every word heavier. The funds transferred to Garrick and Lenora Rook after the sale of Rook's Harbor Hardware, and the upstairs residents were not listed as a gift. They were listed as a care advancement, issued for the purpose of housing, medical support, mobility accommodations, transportation, and daily living assistance for Benton Rook. My mother sat forward. "That is ridiculous. He gave that to us." "He transferred it to you," Rosalind said. "The purpose is documented." She turned another page. "You both signed receipt of care funds on the date of transfer." My father's eyes opened. My mother's mouth parted, then closed. I remembered the yellow legal pad, the polished smile, the papers passed around with coffee. Rosalind slid a copy across the table. There were their signatures. Garrick Rook, Lenora Rook. Under a paragraph, neither of them had cared enough to fear, because the money had already blinded them. Rosalind said, "Under the trust, any care advancement not used for Mr. Rook's care is charged against the beneficiary's share of the recipients." Tobin spoke for the first time. "So what does that mean in normal English?" Rosalind turned to him. "It means your parents already received their distribution, and the trust has deducted it." My mother laughed once, a hard little sound. "Fine. Deduct it from what? Benton had a shop and an apartment. He sold them. That was the money." Rosalind looked at the metal case. "No," she said. "That was the visible money." I felt the room shift before anything opened. Rosalind entered a code into the case and removed a set of old design papers, royalty statements, and a framed photograph of Grandpa standing behind the hardware counter, 30 years younger, holding a metal latch shaped like a hooked wing. I knew the latch. Everyone in Bellwether Cove knew it. It was on half the storm shutters in town. Grandpa had designed it after the 1996 gale blew out windows all along the waterfront. He called it the Rook Catch. I thought he had made it for local customers and forgotten about it. Rosalind placed the papers in the center of the table. In 1998, Mr. Rook licensed his storm lock latch design to a regional manufacturer. That manufacturer was later acquired twice. The design is now part of a coastal safety system sold in 7 states. Mr. Rook retained royalty rights through the trust. Tobin said, "No way." My mother said nothing. My father was staring at the photograph like the younger man in it had accused him from another life. Rosalind distributed the financial summary. The current value of the trust holdings, including accumulated royalties, conservative investments, and pending licensing payments, is approximately $16.7 million. The number did not land loudly. It landed like deep water, silent at first, then pressure from every side. My mother's hand moved to the paper. She looked at it, then at my father, then at Rosalind. He never told us. He was not required to, Rosalind said. We were his family. Rosalind's expression did not change. That appears to have been the question he spent his final months answering. Noreen looked down at her hands. Dr. Stone looked out at the rain. I could not move. The latch. Not land. Not a hidden bank account under a mattress. A small invention from an old hardware man everyone thought had only sold screws and storm rope. He had built something that kept houses closed in bad weather, and the whole time his own family had left him outside in it. Then came the proof. Rosalind opened Grandpa's black logbook to the first marked page and read only selected entries, not all. She did not need all. March 3rd, Lenora said medication can wait until monthly bills settle. March 9th, Garrick said, ramp next month. March 12th, Tobin asked if signature needed before confusion gets worse. March 18th, left at ferry terminal. Rain west by northwest. Noreen present. Maren arrived 10:42 p.m. Wet pills, no transport. My mother stood so fast her chair struck the wall behind her. That is a diary. It proves nothing. Rosalind nodded once. By itself, perhaps not, but Mr. Rook was careful. She gave Dr. Stone a page. He confirmed prescription gaps. She gave Noreen a printed statement. Noreen confirmed the terminal night. Then Rosalind placed security stills on the table, black and white images from the ferry office camera. My father's car at the curb, my father lifting the walker from the trunk, my mother setting the duffel on the bench, Grandpa sitting down, the car leaving. My mother stared at the images as if they had betrayed her by existing. There are also care certifications, Rosalind said. My father whispered, Lenora. It was the same tone from the phone call, warning and surrender together. Rosalind continued. 3 monthly statements were submitted to the trust records by Mrs. Rook, certifying that Mr. Rook was residing in your home and receiving daily care during periods when he was living with Ms. Maren Rook. My mother's face changed then. Not grief, not anger, calculation. I handled paperwork, she said. Dates get confused. Rosalind looked at the logbook, then at the security images, then at Dr. Stone's records. The trust does not punish anyone for being tired, she said. It records who abandoned him. Nobody moved. Outside, rain tapped against the glass with the steady patience of something that had all day. My father put his face in his hands. Tobin stared at the royalty summary with the dead-eyed focus of a man watching a rescue boat sail past without stopping. Rosalind saved Grandpa's letter for the end. She removed it from the binder in a sealed sleeve, opened it carefully, and looked at me before she read. Mr. Rook asked that this be read aloud after the financial terms. My mother crossed her arms. My father did not look up, Rosalind began. To Garrick and Lenora, I gave you $2 million to keep me home. I did not give it because I was confused. I gave it because I wanted to learn whether comfort could be bought from people who had stopped offering kindness for free. I learned the answer. I hope the remodel keeps you warm. It did not keep me warm that night. My mother made a sound like someone had pressed on a bruise. Rosalind continued. To Tobin, a man who brings a notary before he brings a blanket has already told the truth about himself. Tobin's face went red. To Maren, you never asked what I was worth. You asked if I was cold. You counted pills you could not afford. You gave me the bed and took the couch. You let me be difficult without making me feel disposable. That is the difference between family and ownership. I have trusted you with the remainder because you did not try to own me. Use it to keep doors open for people who would otherwise be left outside them. I did not cry in that room. I wanted to, but grief had become a bowl filled too high. One movement, and it would spill everywhere. Rosalind finished the letter. Under the final trust terms, Garrick and Lenora Rook are removed from all trustee and successor roles. Their care advancement is deemed satisfied and fully charged against any distributive share. Tobin Rook receives the specific bequest listed in Schedule C. Tobin grabbed the page. Whatever he saw there was small enough to make him stop breathing for a second. The remaining trust estate passes into continuing trust, with Maren Rook serving as primary trustee, subject to the care purpose provisions Mr. Rook created. My mother turned on me. There it was. The mask dropped so completely that I almost felt sorry for everyone who had believed it. "You did this," she said. "You poisoned him against us. You sat in that little apartment and played saint while we carried the real burden." I looked at the ferry terminal photo on the table. Grandpa under the security light. Small, wet, waiting. "No," I said. "You carried his money. You left him to carry himself." She pointed at me, handshaking. "You have always wanted to punish me. Always. Because you think being quiet makes you better." Rosalind said, "Mrs. Rook." My mother ignored her. "He was old. He was hard. He made everything impossible." My father lifted his head then. His eyes were wet. He looked at the photo, then at me. For 1 second, I saw the father I might have had if courage were easier to inherit. "Maren," he said. My mother snapped, "Garrick, don't." He closed his mouth. That was the final thing he chose in front of me. Not her, not me, the habit. 34 years of lowering his eyes and calling it peace. I stood up. My legs felt strange, but my voice did not. Dispatch had given me that much. "You spent $2 million proving you could not be trusted with one old man," I said. Grandpa only needed the room to hear it out loud. My mother waited for more, for a fight big enough to make her the victim again. I did not give it to her. I picked up the black logbook and Grandpa's letter. Then I looked at my father. "He kept your coat?" I said. "The brown one you said smelled like the shop. He thought you might come back for him." My father broke then, silently, which was still not the same as changing. The trust did not turn my family into criminals overnight. Real consequences are slower than stories pretend. My parents did not contest because Rosalind made clear that a court fight would open the care certifications, the security footage, the prescription gaps, and every page of Grandpa's logbook. Their lawyer advised silence, which was probably the first good advice they had paid for in years. They kept the kitchen, they kept the sunroom, they kept whatever was left of the $2 million after debt, remodels, and Tobin's seafood trailer had eaten through it, but they did not keep the story. That mattered more to my mother than money. Bellwether Cove is small. People who had comforted her at the funeral saw the ferry images eventually, not because I posted them, but because truth in a small town does not need the internet. It travels through grocery aisles, church basements, marina offices, and women like Noreen Wexler who say, "I saw what I saw," until people stop arguing. Aunt Perry called me 2 months later and said, "I owe you an apology." I accepted because refusing would have tied me to her longer. Tobin sold the seafood trailer by fall. My father mailed me Grandpa's old shop apron with no return address, as if grief could be delivered anonymously. My mother sent one email. It said, "You destroyed this family." I read it once, then opened Grandpa's logbook to a blank page and wrote the date. Lenora says, "I destroyed this family. Weather clear. No reply sent." It felt good, not happy. Good. There is a difference. Rosalind helped me set up the Benton rooms, exactly as Grandpa requested. It was not a grand foundation with marble plaques and speeches. Grandpa would have haunted me for that. It was practical. Quiet. Ramps, bathroom rails, emergency beds, medication lockboxes, backup batteries, short-term caregiver help, ferry vouchers for medical appointments. We helped the first family in November, an old fisherman with a daughter who worked double shifts at the cannery and cried when we paid for a stair lift. She kept saying she would pay it back. I told her, Just keep him home safely. Then I went to my car and cried so hard I missed a county budget meeting. The Royalty Trust also funded something I did not expect. A new version of Grandpa's storm lock kit for seniors living alone. Simple latches, window braces, battery lights, waterproof medication sleeves, and a one-button emergency card linked to county resources. I did not design it because I was trying to become a founder or prove my life had a clean second act. I designed it because I kept seeing him on that ferry bench. Wet papers, wet pills. A walker folded like someone had packed away his dignity. Good tools keep people from becoming emergencies. Grandpa had taught me that without saying it directly. The first time the kits shipped, I placed one on the kitchen table beside his black logbook and laughed because the old man who saved screws in baby food jars was now funding packaging design. Then I heard his voice in my head, dry as driftwood. Don't make it fancy. Make it work. It has been a year since the trust was read. I still work dispatch, though fewer nights now. I moved out of the bakery apartment but kept the old red neon sign because it reminds me of the months when love was a couch, a medication chart, and soup stretched with water. The black logbook sits on my desk. I do not write in it every day. I write when something needs to be remembered. Exactly. The weather. The truth. The sentence someone may later pretend they never said. Grandpa's brown work coat hangs by my door, and his shop apron hangs in the office of the Benton rooms. Not framed, just on a hook where a useful thing belongs. Sometimes families call us ashamed. They say they should be able to handle care alone. I tell them what I wish someone had told me sooner. Help is not failure. Abandonment is failure. Paperwork is not cold. Sometimes paperwork is the only warm thing left when people start rewriting the past. I have thought a lot about trust, not the legal kind, though I know more about that now than I ever wanted to. I mean the human kind, the kind people ask for after they have already broken it. My parents thought trust was something blood gave them forever. Grandpa knew better. Trust was not inherited. It was observed, it was dated, it was written down in black ink during storms. My parents took $2 million and thought the account was settled. They thought care was a word they could say in public while refusing it in private. But a person is not cared for because you claim them at a funeral. A person is cared for when someone notices their socks are wet, when someone counts the pills, when someone gives up the bed, when someone drives through floodwater because an old man should not have to wait for kindness beside a closed ferry terminal. That is my story. My parents took Grandpa's $2 million for care and dumped him in a storm. They thought the money was the ending. It was only the test. The trust was read in a quiet room while rain hit the windows, and for the first time, the people who had spent months talking had to listen to what he wrote. If this story reminds you of someone who showed up when it was inconvenient, call them while you still can. And if your family has built care on promises alone, write things down. Love can be real and still need protection. A trust is not just money. It is the last place a person writes down who made them feel safe. Commentary, discussion, and story explanation. Now that the story is over, let's not rush away from it. Let's sit with it for a while, because this was not just a story about money. It was not just about a grandfather, a storm, and a trust document. This was a story about what happens when a family uses the language of love but acts with the heart of a stranger. It was about care, responsibility, greed, silence, and the kind of truth that does not need to shout because it has already been written down. At the beginning, we saw Maren at work as a 911 dispatcher. That detail is important. She is not just any narrator. She is someone trained to answer emergencies. She hears panic for a living. She listens to people when they are scared, hurt, trapped, confused, or alone. And then, one night, her own family becomes the emergency. Her phone buzzes, and she receives a message from Noreen Wexler saying her grandfather is sitting outside the closed ferry terminal in a storm. That one message changes the whole story. It takes Benton from being an old man inside a family disagreement to being an abandoned human being in danger. And let's pause on that image. Benton is not standing outside because he wandered away. He is not lost. He is not confused. He is sitting there with his walker, a duffel bag, and wet medical papers. That is not an accident. That is placement. Someone brought him there. Someone unloaded his things. Someone left. That is why the ferry terminal scene is so powerful. It shows the truth before anyone explains it. A family can say many things later. They can say they were overwhelmed. They can say they arranged care. They can say he was difficult. But the image speaks first. An old man was left outside in bad weather after giving his family $2 million for his care. This is where the story starts asking the audience a hard question. What does care really mean? Is care a word you say when people are watching? Is care a post online? Is care accepting money and promising to do better? Or is care what happens when nobody is clapping, when the old person needs help at inconvenient times, when the medication is expensive, when the ramp still needs to be built, when the person is slow, stubborn, tired, and scared? That is the difference the story keeps showing us again and again. Lenora and Garrett claimed care. Maren performed care. Not on a stage, not for praise, in a small apartment with bills, exhaustion, and no applause. Now let's talk about the $2 million. In many family stories, money is treated like the main prize, but here, money is more like a flashlight. It shines on everyone's character. Benton gives the money to Garrick and Lenora with a clear purpose. Use it to keep me home. He does not ask for a mansion. He does not ask to be treated like a king. He asks for safety, dignity, and a place where he can age without being thrown away. That should have been simple. But once the money arrives, we see what the parents really value. The care room stays unfinished, but the kitchen gets upgraded. The ramp does not happen, but debts get paid. Medication becomes delayed, but the family image stays polished. That is one of the sharpest points in the story. The money was supposed to reduce the burden of care, but instead, it gave the wrong people permission to feel entitled. They stopped seeing Benton as the person the money was meant to protect. They started seeing him as the remaining inconvenience after the money had already been received. That is a very ugly form of greed. It is not loud greed. It is not someone openly saying, I want the money and not the responsibility. It is quieter. It hides behind phrases like, we're overwhelmed, he's difficult, we already did our part, and family takes care of family. But when you look at the actions, the truth becomes clear. Lenora is the kind of character who understands public performance very well. She knows how to sound caring. She knows how to stand in front of people and look wounded. She knows how to use soft words to cover hard actions. That is why she is dangerous. She is not just cruel in private. She is believable in public. She posts the right photo. She says the right sentence. She accepts sympathy. She turns herself into the victim before anyone has time to ask what Benton actually went through. This is a very real kind of family manipulation. The person who controls the story early often controls how others judge the truth later. And that is why Maren's silence is not simple. Some people might watch the story and think, why didn't she expose her mother immediately? Why didn't she tell everyone about the ferry terminal? Why didn't she show the proof right away? But the story answers that in a smarter way. Maren understands that some rooms are not built for truth. A fundraiser is not a courtroom. A gossip circle is not a place for evidence. If she argues too early, Lenora can call her emotional. If she cries too much, Lenora can call her unstable. If she gets angry, Lenora can say, see, this is what I mean. So Maren waits. Her silence is not weakness. It is control. She does not waste the truth in a room where people only want drama. Now look at Garrick, because his character is quietly tragic. He is Benton's son. He should be the one standing between Benton and harm, but he does not. Garrick is not as loud as Lenora, but his silence is part of the damage. He knows things are wrong. We see it in the way he hesitates, the way he avoids eye contact, the way he almost speaks, but then stops. This matters because many families are not destroyed only by the cruel person. They are destroyed by the weak people who keep letting cruelty continue. Garrick may feel guilt, but guilt without action does not protect anyone. Feeling bad after harm is not the same as preventing harm. That is one of the big lessons from this story. If you see someone being mistreated and you stay quiet because speaking up is uncomfortable, your silence becomes part of the mistreatment. Garrick wants to believe he is not as bad as Lenora because he is not the one making the speeches. But he drove the car. He watched Benton sit at the terminal. He let the story spread. He accepted the benefit of the money. So the story does not let him escape. It shows that passive betrayal is still betrayal. Tobin, the brother, represents another kind of greed. He is not polished like Lenora. He is not weak like Garrick. He is opportunistic. He shows up when papers might matter. He brings a notary, not a blanket. He brings donuts, not help. He speaks in words like protection and family point person, but the timing gives him away. He is not interested in Benton's comfort. He is interested in control. That scene is important because it shows how greed often arrives politely. It does not always kick the door open. Sometimes it knocks, smiles, and brings paperwork. Benton sees through Tobin because Benton has spent his life reading practical things. Storms, hinges, repair jobs, unpaid invoices, people's habits. He knows what a fake concern looks like. His line about a signature not being a blanket is one of the strongest moral lines in the story. It means legal power cannot replace human care. A person who wants authority over an elder should first prove they can bring warmth, safety, and respect. Tobin wants the signature before the service. Benton refuses because he understands exactly what is happening. Now let's talk about Benton himself. He is not written as a helpless old man who simply suffers. He is vulnerable. Yes, his body is weaker. He needs help, but his mind is sharp. His memory is careful. His sense of justice is slow but strong. And most importantly, he is observant. He does not fight every insult in the moment. He records, he watches, he gives people enough rope to show who they are. That makes his final trust reveal feel powerful because it was not random revenge. It was the result of months of watching, testing, documenting, and making sure the truth would survive him. His black waterproof logbook is the emotional center of the story. It is such a simple object, but it carries so much meaning. At first, it looks like an old habit, a weather diary, something a retired hardware man keeps because he likes dates and details. But slowly, we understand that the logbook is Benton's way of protecting reality. When people lie, they often attack memory first. They say, that never happened. They say, you misunderstood. They say, he was confused. They say, she is emotional. Benton knows this, so he writes down dates, words, weather, witnesses, and actions. His logbook becomes a quiet wall against future lies. This is one of the strongest practical lessons in the whole story. When care, money, and family power are involved, documentation matters. Writing things down does not mean you are cold. It means you understand that vulnerable people need protection. Benton's logbook does not replace love. It protects truth when love is being faked by the wrong people. And in the trust reading, we see why that matters. Lenora can argue with Maren. She can insult her. She can perform grief. But she cannot easily argue with the logbook, the pharmacy records, the doctor, the witness, and the security footage all lining up together. The story also makes a very important point about elder abuse. It is not always dramatic at first. It can begin with small delays. The room is not finished yet. The medicine can wait. The appointment can be moved. The old person is called difficult. Their phone goes missing. Their words are questioned. Their needs become annoying. Their money becomes useful, but their presence becomes a burden. By the time the storm scene happens, the abandonment looks shocking, but the story has already shown us the road that led there. Cruelty often becomes possible one small excuse at a time. Maren's care for Benton is shown through practical details, and that is what makes it believable. She gives him the bedroom, she sleeps on the couch, she buys the shower chair, she organizes medication, she calls doctors, she installs railings she can barely afford, she works night shifts and still handles breakfast. This is not glamorous care. It is not cinematic in the usual way. It is ordinary, tiring, repetitive, and expensive, and that is exactly why it matters. Real care is often made of small actions repeated until they become a life. This is where the story becomes more than a revenge plot. It becomes a discussion about invisible labor. Many caregivers are not praised. They are questioned. They are blamed. They are told they are too controlling or too emotional. They lose sleep, money, time, and sometimes their own health. Maren's story respects that labor. It shows that care is not just a feeling, it is a schedule. It is a body on a couch. It is a bank account getting smaller. It is a person choosing to show up again the next morning. The hospital scene adds another layer of proof and pain. Dr. Stone finds prescription gaps from the time Benton was supposedly being cared for by Garrick and Lenora. That detail is important because it shows neglect in a measurable way. Missing medication is not just a family disagreement. It can harm a person's body. It can cause dizziness, collapse, fear, and decline. This turns the parent's failure from emotional betrayal into something closer to documented harm. The story does not need to exaggerate. The records speak clearly. Then we reach the funeral, and this is where public image and private truth collide. Lenora performs grief perfectly. She wears the right color, says the right lines, and accepts comfort from people who do not know what happened. And this scene is uncomfortable because it shows how easily communities can reward performance. People see tears and assume love. They hear a soft voice and assume sacrifice. But the story asks us to be careful. Tears are not evidence. A speech is not evidence. A funeral performance does not erase a ferry terminal. Noreen Wexler's role is small but powerful. She is not family. She is not rich. She is not central to the inheritance. But she saw the truth. Her sentence, "I saw what I saw," matters because abusers often depend on everyone else being unsure. They need people to say, maybe it was a misunderstanding. Noreen refuses that fog. She does not over-explain. She does not dramatize. She simply stands by what she witnessed. In stories like this, one honest witness can change the weight of the room. Now, the trust reading is the heart of the climax. But what makes it satisfying is not only the money, it is the structure of truth. Rosalind does not enter the room like an avenger. She enters like a professional. She has the documents. She has the capacity evaluations. She has Benton's instructions. She has the care receipts. She has the logbook. She has the security stills. That is what makes Lenora's power shrink. Lenora is used to emotional control. She is used to shaping the narrative. But Rosalind's room is not built for performance. It is built for facts. The first reveal is that the $2 million was not simply a gift. It was a care advancement. This is very important because it changes the meaning of the transfer. Garrick and Lenora thought they had already won. They thought the money was theirs and Benton was the burden left behind. But the trust says something different. The money had a purpose. The money was connected to responsibility. And because they failed that responsibility, the money is counted against them. That is not revenge in a childish sense. That is accountability. The document holds them to the meaning they accepted when they took the funds. Then comes the bigger reveal, the Storm Lock Latch royalties. This twist works because it is connected to Benton's identity. He was a hardware man. He made practical things. He understood storms. He designed something that protected homes from bad weather. That hidden asset is not random. It grows naturally from his life. It also creates a painful contrast. Benton's invention kept strangers safe during storms, but his own family left him outside in one. That is why the reveal has emotional force. The money is impressive, but the meaning behind the money is what really hurts. When Rosalind says the trust is worth around $16.7 million, the room changes, but notice something. Maren does not suddenly become greedy. She does not celebrate. She does not smile at her mother's pain. She is stunned because the money was never her motive. This matters. If Maren had spent the story asking about assets, the reveal would feel different. But she asked if Benton was cold. She counted pills. She gave him her bed. That is why the trust choosing her feels morally earned. The story is not saying she deserves money because she suffered. It is saying Benton trusted her because she proved she would protect the purpose of the money. Benton's letter is the emotional verdict. Legal documents can explain terms, but his letter explains the heart. To Garrick and Lenora, he says he gave them the money to see whether comfort could be bought from people who had stopped offering kindness for free. That line is devastating because it shows Benton knew more than they thought. He was not confused. He was not blind. He was watching. He hoped maybe that they would choose better, but he also prepared for the possibility that they would not. To Maren, he says she never asked what he was worth. She asked if he was cold. That is the whole story in one contrast. This is where the title fully pays off. The parents took Grandpa's $2 million for care. They dumped him in a storm. Then the trust was read. The trust reading is not just a legal event. It is the moment where every lie is forced to sit beside every fact. It is the moment where public performance cannot protect private cruelty anymore. It is the moment where Benton, even after death, gets to speak clearly. Maren's final response is also important. She does not give a long, angry speech. She does not try to destroy her mother with insults. She says the truth plainly. You spent $2 million proving you could not be trusted with one old man. That line works because it is simple. It does not need decoration. The whole story has already proven it. Sometimes the strongest line is not the loudest line. It is the line that names exactly what everyone in the room now knows. The aftermath is realistic. The parents are not dragged away in handcuffs. Tobin does not explode into a cartoon villain. The town does not instantly become perfect. But the family's false image breaks. That is a real consequence. For someone like Lenora, reputation is power. When people stop believing her version, she loses the stage she used to control everyone. Garrick loses the comfort of silence. Tobin loses the future money he expected. And Maren gains not only control of the trust, but control of the truth. The Benton room's ending gives the story its final moral shape. Maren uses the trust to help other families care for aging relatives safely. This is the opposite of what Lenora did. Lenora took care money and made it serve comfort, status, and self-interest. Maren takes trust money and turns it back into ramps, beds, rails, medication support, and emergency help. That is why the ending feels clean. The money returns to its original purpose. It protects vulnerable people. It keeps doors open. It makes sure someone else is not left outside in the rain. And this is where the story becomes a lesson for the audience. If there is an aging parent or a grandparent in your family, do not wait until crisis makes everyone defensive. Talk about care clearly. Write down responsibilities. Know who handles medication. Know who pays for what. Know where the documents are. Know what the older person wants. These conversations may feel uncomfortable, but they are kinder than confusion. A family that truly wants to care should not be afraid of clarity. Another lesson is about believing actions over performances. Lenora's words were beautiful. Her actions were not. Maren's life looked messy. Her actions were steady. This is something we can carry into real life. The person who looks polished is not always the person doing the work. The person who speaks softly is not always innocent. The person who is tired, imperfect, and quiet may be the one holding everything together. The story also teaches that greed does not always look like greed. Sometimes it looks like family planning. Sometimes it looks like concern. Sometimes it looks like we know what is best. Sometimes it looks like a notary at the kitchen table. That is why we have to pay attention to timing. Who shows up when labor is needed? Who shows up when signatures are needed? Who shows up when medication must be paid for? Who shows up only when the trust is being discussed? Timing often tells the truth before people do. Maren's journey also reminds us that quiet people are not empty people. She does not fight every lie because she is weak. She is choosing where her energy goes. She puts her energy into Benton's care, not Lenora's theater. That is a powerful lesson. Not every accusation deserves your immediate response. Sometimes the best answer is to keep doing the right thing and let the right room hear the proof at the right time. And Benton's story reminds us not to underestimate old people. Families sometimes talk around aging relatives as if age has removed their intelligence. Benton hears everything. He understands more than they expect. He notices who asks about comfort and who asks about accounts. He notices who brings paperwork and who brings help. He notices who repeats the word family while acting like a creditor. His body may be weaker, but his judgment is sharp. The trust reading proves that he was never the confused old man Lenora described. He was the clearest person in the family. In the end, the story is not really asking us to admire money. It is asking us to respect care. The trust money is large, but the moral test is small and human. Did you keep him warm? Did you give him a safe place to sleep? Did you refill the medicine? Did you listen when he spoke? Did you protect his dignity when he could not protect it alone? Those are the questions that matter. And in this story, Maren could answer yes. Garrick, Lenora, and Tobin could not. So when we look back at the storm, the ferry terminal, the logbook, the lawyer's office, and the trust reading, we see one clear message. A person is not cared for because a family says the word care. A person is cared for when someone does the work. And if the people with the money refuse to do the work, then the person with the heart may become the true heir, not because they chased inheritance, but because they honored the human being everyone else treated like a burden. That is why this story stays with us. It is painful, but it is not hopeless. Benton was abandoned, but he was not erased. Maren was lied about, but she was not defeated. The truth was delayed, but it was not lost. It waited in a black, waterproof logbook. It waited in doctor records. It waited in security images. It waited inside a trust document. And when the room was finally quiet enough, the truth spoke. The final lesson is simple. Care leaves evidence. Neglect leaves evidence too. One day, maybe not in a lawyer's office, maybe not in a trust reading, but somewhere, the truth of how we treated vulnerable people will be known, maybe by a family, maybe by a community, maybe only by the person we helped or failed to help. But it will be known. So the question is not what we can claim later. The question is what our actions are recording right now. If this story made you think of someone who once showed up for you, do not wait too long to thank them. If it made you think of someone vulnerable in your family, check on them. If it made you uncomfortable about an unclear care arrangement, write it down. And if you are the person quietly doing the work while others talk, remember this. Quiet care still counts. Even when nobody sees it yet, even when others twist the story, even when the storm is loud, the truth may take time, but it has a way of finding the room where it can finally be read. The end.